this video we will look at exactly how to place support resistance lines on your chart. Placing good support resistance lines allows you to see where the price is probably going to have trouble breaking. This is extremely useful if you want to trade line breakouts, or if you're already in a trade and you want to know where to place a stop, or even better, to take profit. Personally, I use them mainly for line breaks. Breakouts from these lines work very well, and they often net me 50 to 70 pips per trade on GBP JPY. That's probably going to be a little less on Euro USD and GBP USD. Before I show you exactly how to place them, we need to understand what they are. So, what are SR lines? SR lines are areas on a chart at which the price has had trouble breaking in the past, and is therefore likely going to have problems breaking that same area in the future. Now, that is a very boring and clinical definition, so let's try to do this another way. Let's imagine a support resistance line is a person. What traits would that support resistance line have? Well, first of all, the support resistance line would be obvious. The most important aspect of a good support resistance line is that it is obvious. It is in your face. It is very, very obvious to see, very obvious to place. Support resistance lines work because thousands of traders expect the price to find a barrier at that level. So you need to place the most obvious ones. In other words, the same line that thousands of traders are looking at. So support resistance lines are obvious, in your face. They're never subtle. They're always obvious. The other thing is they are indirect. Most newbies think that support resistance lines need to have a direct impact on the price. This is simply not true. They can have either a direct or indirect impact on the price. Direct impacts are things like wick bounces, which we'll look at next, and indirect impacts are things like holding the price back for a while. So the support resistance line acts as a very temporary barrier to the price. The price approaches it and it kind of holds it away for maybe 1, 2, 3 candles, and then it pushes through. That's an indirect impact. Okay, and the other thing is they're imprecise. Newbies look for the price to either perfectly bounce from the line or perfectly break the line. This is not the case. Some support resistance lines will hold the price back before it is even touched, and some will hold the price back after it has been broken. So support resistance lines are obvious, they are indirect, and they are imprecise. Now, indirect and imprecise, that doesn't sound like a very useful trading tool. However, they are very useful. And now we're going to switch over to a chart. I'm going to place some support resistance lines, and I'm going to show you just how useful support resistance lines can be. Okay, you're looking at a GBP JPY 4-hour chart, and I'm going to throw up some support resistance lines on this chart and show you how to place them. Now, the very first thing you do when you're placing support resistance lines is switch to a 4-hour or a daily time frame. Now, you do this because the 4-hour and the daily time frame, they filter out a lot of the noise that you get on the lower time frames. For example, the 1 hour, the 30-minute, the 15-minute. So it doesn't matter if you trade exclusively the 15-minute charts or the 1-hour charts. When you place support resistance lines, jump up to the daily chart or the 4-hour chart, either one, and you place your support resistance lines based on either the daily or the 4-hour time frame. Now, you just choose whichever one works best for you, so experiment a little. Place some support resistance lines based on the 4-hour, place some based on the daily, whichever one works best for you. Personally, I use both of them. I usually place them on the daily, confirm them on the 4-hour, but sometimes I'll place them on the 4-hour, like I'm going to do now. Okay, so the first step is to look for recent areas of support and resistance. So you look at recent price action and you look for recent areas of support and resistance. Now, on this chart here, very obvious one is here. This is a very obvious sign of support. The price moved down, tried to break through here, but it couldn't, and it reversed. So the price was supported here, came down, and it reversed. Now, this is a strong indication of support resistance, and before I was talking about direct and indirect, this is definitely a direct sign of support resistance. Comes down and it bounces away. Now, this is not yet a support resistance line. This is a possible support resistance line. We place this line, but then we have to scroll back and we have to confirm that it is actually a support resistance line, because a support resistance line requires history. It has to have bounced away from the line in the past. So we place it here, and then we scroll back and we look for previous bounces from this line. And let's place another one. To start with, I'm going to place it at the two outermost points in the recent price action. So this one up here, this one up here. This is obviously a sign of resistance. The price came up, tried to break, it couldn't, it reversed. So that's a clear sign of resistance. This is a sign of support, that's a sign of resistance. It resisted the price moving further up. So now we have these two possible support resistance lines. Let's scroll back and confirm these lines. And let's start with this 143.60 level. So let's scroll back. Okay, here it broke kind of straight through it almost. So that's not a very, very good sign of support resistance. However, here, if you look here, this is an indirect sign of support resistance, and it is an indirect sign because you see that the candle comes down to this line, tries to break it, but it can't. The wick shoots below the line and the body closes on top of the line. Next candle eventually breaks. So this is an indirect sign of support resistance. You could see that the price tried to break through this line, but it couldn't right away. Indirect sign of support resistance. This isn't really much of a sign of support resistance, but what's important is this one. Now this is a direct sign of support and resistance. It directly impacts this line with a wick bounce and then reverses straight away. That's a very, very clear sign of support and resistance. A direct sign, a very, very clear one. So obviously a sign like this, it really does indicate to you that this is a valid line. But it's probably not enough. We have to scroll back and have a bit more of a look. But we have a bounce here, indirect sign of support resistance here, direct sign of support resistance there. So let's scroll back a little further. Look again, another direct sign. So this is shaping up to be a very strong support resistance line. Direct bounce, very long wick, comes down to this point and bounces away. Before that we have it broke through it. But just because the price breaks through a support resistance line, it doesn't mean it's not a valid line. I mean, when the price breaks through it, it's usually a good thing because you're probably going to be able to make a few pips from that. So that is not clearly a sign of support resistance, but at the same time, it's not a bad sign. And here you can see the price comes down, a wick bounce, the body tries to break it, but it can't. The body closes on the line. This body breaks it, causes a sort of indecision candle or reversal candle. The price reverses slightly, so it's clear that it's holding the price back. It didn't manage to hold it back completely. Eventually it broke, but this line did try and hold the price back. You have a pretty strong bearish trend here. Then all of a sudden this candle's tiny, hits that support resistance line, reverses, the body closes on the line. Eventually it breaks, but it had a hard time breaking. Here it well, this must have been a weekend because it opened up here, pushed down. Yeah, this must have been a gap from the weekend. It broke through, then when it came back up, you see it tried to break. That's a more indirect sign of support resistance. Again, an indirect sign here, tried to break through. Eventually it did, but it took a while. So this is a decent support resistance line so far. Further back you scroll, the more signs that this is a valid support resistance line. Tried to break it here, couldn't, eventually it did. Look, indirect sign, wicks poking up through, the bodies can't get through. Here it broke pretty much straight through, but again, you know, it's going to break through it sometimes, it can't be perfect. But yeah, this looks like a nice clear sign of support resistance. Look at this, comes down to the line and all these wicks kind of bouncing. This one slightly broke below it, this one bounced directly off it, this one almost directly off it. Very clear sign of indirect support resistance here. Do I need to go back any further? This is definitely a valid support resistance line. As far back as you scroll, you see that it has been holding the price back effectively for a very long time. So clear sign of support resistance. And that's how you place them.